Chapter 7. Sex-blind trans inclusion. Perhaps sex-blind trans inclusivity is simply men's rights activism. In some ways, gender identity could be the perpetual battle of straight men to get back the gay sex that they've lost under modern heteropatriarchy. After all, the Samoan third gender was a way for heterosexual men to have sex with male-bodied people without it being considered gay. A very similar dynamic is found in Iran. A very similar dynamic is found in Thailand. Maybe this is why gender theorists are so insistent that trans women are women. It's not for the sake of the so-called trans women. It's for the sake of the straight men who want to have sex with them. This is why the humanity of so-called trans women is so utterly dependent on them being women under all circumstances and without question. If this wasn't the case, it would be possible for trans women to be both male and human, just like other men. But this can never be the case for trans women because their existence is predicated on homophobia. So instead of saying something like homosexuality or bisexuality don't make a man less human, which actually addresses the issue, queer theorists have taken it upon themselves to gaslight society by violently insisting that trans women are women, so that straight men as a class can continue having gay sex while also still being homophobic. There are lots of ways in which women are massively disadvantaged by sex-blind trans inclusion. This is not surprising because it is women's systemic disadvantage on the basis of sex that is the reason that these institutions exist in the first place. We could expect the same result if we decided to queer disability and thought that no one really needed access ramps because, after all, disability is a social construct. This same dynamic can be seen in everything from allowing men into women's sports leagues, to toilets, to change rooms, to domestic violence shelters, to scholarships, to parliamentary quotas. In every case, it doesn't impact men at all, and if it does, it is only to expand their social power. Just as our queered disabled ramps are only going to impact people with disabilities, our trans inclusionary policy of granting everyone a disabled parking permit on the basis that disability is a spectrum, weirdly also only impacts disabled people negatively. A raising class consciousness only hinders the oppressed class.
I don't see race/class/sex. I'm just so loving that I can't even see how gross you are. Signed, bourgeois liberalism.
For example, trans inclusion for women can look like getting to go to a male prison to serve your sentence for having a miscarriage. You've come a long way, baby killer. Queer theory conditions people to think that women's political autonomy is anywhere from rude to literally violent. In order to do that, they draw a comparison between women-only spaces and white-only spaces advocated by Nazis. Yes, they have literally picked up the right-wing feminazi trope completely unironically.
Oh no!
But all this does is expose how male the gaze of queer theory really is. Women are obviously an oppressed group. They are perhaps the first oppressed group ever to have existed, and it is upon their oppression that all other systemic oppression is based. This is because without patriarchy, there is no class society, and without class society, there is no colonialism, and without colonialism, no whiteness, and without whiteness, no racism, as it is understood today. Women are oppressed by men under patriarchy, and gender is a male idea. While same-sex attraction has always been part of humanity, LGBT and Q are not ahistorical categories, which means you have to be at certain points in history and in certain places for them to be understood, and not always because society is too straight and stuffy to understand the far-out concepts. Sometimes it is because a particular society is, for lack of a better term, so gay that our definitions are no longer applicable. Female, on the other hand, is literally a prehistoric category. There have been adult human females in every single society on Earth. Furthermore, political control of human female reproductive capacity is literally the material basis of patriarchy. Contrary to some people who say that women want to make feminism about their genitals, I think you will find that it was men that made feminism about women's genitals. It comes down to the fact that no one's femininity ever gave a man an heir. Just ask the demons of patriarchy.
I mean, fucking is nice, but I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we would have to admit that it just can't perform a work hour the way good old human offspring can. You can even make offspring work while you fuck. That's how good offspring are.
And completely by coincidence, of course, female just so happens to be the one category that gets erased by bourgeois gender theory. They have all the intersections in the world except the one that actually got them here. This is not to suggest a conspiracy or even a deliberate plan. This type of medicalizing of social norms can be seen throughout history in seemingly benign concepts like addictive personalities or visual learners, and even in more obviously political conditions like virgin, royal blood, drapetomania, or hysteria. It is in this sense that transgenderism is not a defeat of traditional gender roles, as much as it may be the only way to save them in a modern secular context. Transgenderism is basically science's shiny new liquid metal Terminator in comparison to the church's outdated and clunky T-800. Such an ideological upgrade had become an absolute necessity for the patriarchy in the wake of second-wave feminism. This historical upheaval had created far too many exceptions to the old rules, so the ideological illusions had to become more advanced and more adaptable in order to deliver the same results. Some decades ago, sexologists were contending with discoveries which included intersex conditions and gender roles. The system found itself needing to work out how to put it all together in a way that used the most recent science in order to justify the world's oldest oppression and hopefully turn a profit. It is only our own particular historical social structures that meant being faced with a dickless boy with preferences we interpreted as masculine would pose such a vexing and alarming social conundrum. But in the eyes of our system, he was an enigma. After all, not only was he without penis, but in an apparent effort to teach him girlhood, they had figuratively drowned him in Barbies and literally had him simulate sex with his brother. And somehow, despite this obviously appropriate and appealing introduction, he baffled the experts by continuing to prefer masculinity. The only solution sexologists could see was that liking Call of Duty must be in the brain, or maybe in the foot, but definitely not in the dick. This brain sex scam has provided the foundation for gender identity ever since. It's phrenology for the iPhone generation.